everybody. Good afternoon. Hello. I love that intro music. That was great. Hi, everyone. I am Leslie Silverman. I'm the head of Web3 at United Talent Agency in Los Angeles. It's good to see you all. And I have the unique privilege of getting to work with creators and brands in my role. And I want to just go down our esteemed panel and have our creators and brands introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Betty. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Deadfellaz, and this is my first time at Consensus.
Hey, everybody. My name is Devin. I look after Web3 and emerging tech for Diageo. Diageo is a big spirits company, so we've got brands in our portfolio: Johnny Walker, Smirnoff, Crown Royal, Guinness. Glad to be here.
What's up, everyone? I'm Logik. I'm the founder of Studio Logik Agency. It's a Web3 agency creating a world at the intersection of art, culture, and technology. Glad to be here.
Hi, everyone. Bonjour. My name is Angelic Vendette, and I'm the CMO of Aloe Yoga. I also lead everything brand innovation, technology innovation, including Web3.
Amazing. I'm so lucky that I get to share the stage with all of you. And this is what I love about Web3 is like our panelists all have fans in the audience, and I think that's the energy that I'm feeling at Consensus this week. So, okay, I'm going to start with kind of the basic question about this intersection of creator and brand, which is, you know, we know in 2021 the sort of impetus for innovating at the intersection of brands and creators was for brands to stay relevant. Everything was Web3, everything was NFTs in 2021, but the environment has changed. And so what is the basic foundation impetus now for a brand to build at the intersection of Web3?
I think that the way that brands have traditionally marketed to consumers has, long been kind of similar, and we've reached this saturation point where people are demanding authenticity and transparency in their intention and how they're marketing. But we've also gone through many years of co-creation in Web 2, and so we've reached this point where now community members and fans and creators are being acknowledged by brands, or should be acknowledged by brands if it's done well, to co-create with them. And it is just more transparent and honest. And I think that, in an age of self-sovereignty and ownership of digital assets, it's only fair that that relationship starts to change. So I'm really proud of being part of that and showing how it can be done.
So if you're working for, let's say, a legacy brand portfolio of liquor brands, in 2023, what is the goal of aiming at Web3?
Yeah, so I would say it's a couple things. For us in beverage alcohol, if your brands are not in culture, they're not going to grow, right? So the first thing for us is to make sure that we're in culture, and I feel like that's what Web3 is. There's a lot of energy behind that, empowering artists and creators, so that's a big thing for us. The second is, we look at this space as really a way to accelerate what we're doing in luxury, reaching new luxury buyers. So a lot of the work that we've done in Web3, I think, has touched on that. And then lastly, just looking at what the technology can do, how we monetize our brand IP in new ways, innovate, create new business models. So I think that's where we're focused, and we're going to continue to focus.
I love that you highlighted the culture. Yeah, go ahead, Logik.
Yeah, at the beginning, everyone was like the gold rush, and a lot of the projects for the brands were extractive. They were just taking a lot of liquidity out of the space and weren't really putting anything impactful back. So in this day,
call out some brands for that on this.
We've all minted those projects.
Sure, we all know.
Yeah,
in our
we
minds.
know. So like today, even being approached by brands, I make sure that, like Betty said, co-creating, but also how can we make this bigger than just a simple NFT? And that's with the brands, because the brand's only as strong as the agency or the team behind them to understand the underlying reason why we're using the technology, so then we can make it frictionless and make the experience that much more profound. One example is I just partnered with MasterCard, and they're doing an Artist Accelerator program just to educate music fans and musicians on how to leverage the technology to better themselves in the space, more so than, and the mint was free, more so than them trying to take liquidity out of the space and, bastardize the space.
I think that's fantastic. My hope that in our time together is that we highlight for the audience what that intersection is, like what that collaboration could look like, and some best practices. So, thank you for sharing about the MasterCard example, and I think that there are others that I hope we can talk about today. Angelic?
Yeah, for sure. I think, it's really about actually leaning into values of community. A ton of brands, right, will say community is at the core, community is a pillar of what we do. But when you really dig in, it's actually just a brand or a company kind of sending a message down to the consumer. And in Web3, what's really beautiful and unique is that you get a chance to co-create, to co-build, to really empower the community so that it doesn't just stem in from the brand itself, but that you have members of that community that are stepping up and that are building alongside with you and authentically getting value out of it and not just being extracted the value of, right? When you think of a transactional sale, of it being one way for, brand to consumer, consumers paying out, how do you actually build a community that's authentic in that way? So that's in Web 2, but in Web 3, you can get something out of it. You can get an amplified experience, whether that's a digital good that unlocks certain utility, whether that's unlocking benefit, whether that's unlocking early access. So really, really giving the power back to them.
So if I'm creating a little list here, hitting the mark sounds like collaboration, connection, utility, and missing the mark, maybe things like exploiting the market financially.
Yeah, I think that a lot of brands see this space and they think, cool, that's another avenue for us to create revenue for ourselves. And it's not actually it at all. It should be an extension of the brand, woven into the DNA of the brand, and benefit the people that have helped put that brand where it is. I think that a really interesting opportunity that I see is especially in the luxury space, because when you think about the community that surrounds themselves around luxury brands, the majority of them can't actually afford to buy anything from that brand. They'll save up a long time, they'll buy a keyring, maybe they save up for a couple of years and buy a bag, and it's like a coveted item that they just love so much. Those people are building that brand into what it is, but they're rarely recognized or acknowledged in the same way that their top customers are. So I think that allowing entry points and acknowledging people that have, done the work essentially to create that that demand is just so interesting to me.
Yeah, and I think just to build on that, from a brand perspective, when we work with talent in a traditional sense, I'm thinking about our Super Bowl ad we ran on Crown Royal. The talent we worked with was Dave Grohl. The ad was called "Thank You Canada." It was fantastic. It's pretty basic. Work with talent that likes your brand, right? That it's aligned with your values.
Authenticity.
Right, yeah. We try to do the same thing in the Web3 space. Thinking about Johnny Walker, we've worked with communities like World of Women and, Aku. Johnny Walker stands for progress and promoting equality. So it's, a lot of the lessons that we've learned in traditional marketing, I think do carry over to Web3, and it's really all about authenticity.
I want to do something a little different and kind of break out a case study on this stage, because it was brought to my attention this morning that both Betty and Logik, you both worked with the Chicago Bulls on their Web3 project and had a positive experience. I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like that was an interesting one that had many levers. So could you guys talk about what was positive about that experience of working with a major globally visible brand?
Yeah, no, for sure. The reason why it was a delight, because they came in very humble and very transparent that this was a new frontier for them. And they were very receptive to our feedback. Like even, for instance, Twitter Spaces wasn't even on their radar, and I suggested that we do Twitter Spaces, and I hosted it for, it was a collaboration between them and Coinbase. I had a brain fart.
Ooh.
Just in that narrative, when people look at these brands, so I have a history working with, I worked in marketing, advertising. I was a creative director at Google, so I've been on these verticals where you work with brands to create something new. And I think it's safe to give a lot of these spaces grace, or these companies grace, because the teams are like 5 people, 7 people, and they're trying to figure out this Web3 vertical and trying to communicate it to the entire team. Even if you are a creator working with a brand, sometimes you have to take advocacy for yourself and speak up and realize that it's just people and ideas and that your input actually matters in those rooms.
I agree, and I had a similar experience with them. I feel like also coming from a traditional background of creative production, there's usually many, many, many layers of approvals that something has to go through before it's surfaced ever. And that can take a really long time. It's quite a frustrating process. But with this collaboration, Chicago Bulls really gave up a lot of control, I guess, and leeway. There was like a lot of rope to work with. And they were doing things like changing their profile picture on their social media to the designs that we were creating. Like the Deadfellaz Chicago Bulls logo was on their social media as their profile picture. That's crazy to me.
It was so dope.
At the time, how old were we as a brand? Less than a year. It was something crazy like that. And that's a reality. That happened. It surfaced the art from all of the collaborating artists to their audience through their main identity online, which is the point. I think, if they'd have been like, we're going to do a Chicago Bulls Web3 thing, and they made a new profile, and they'd have been like next to no impact on, in either industry. But it was just so much bigger because they lent into it so hard.
Yeah, but I think that's a success point that I've seen across so many brands is their desire to just put what they're doing in this space on full blast. Like if you're gonna do a Web3 thing to check the box and then not talk about it, you lose out on so much opportunity. But I imagine that not every brand can quickly pivot in the way that the Bulls did, can quickly run through the approvals to change their profile picture across their social media accounts. So I guess if you're not in such a flexible environment as a brand and you have to run through multiple approvals and red tape in order to effectuate change within an organization, how should we be thinking about this?
Can I chime in? If
Yes.
you're doing anything as a brand to check a box, right, you're doing the wrong thing, first and foremost. If you're doing something because you want to be part of the media cycle, if you're doing something because there's a hype train or you're trying to, increase value or get revenue, you're doing it for the wrong thing. And especially in the Web3 space or specific to this conversation. And so, there's also food for thought of, hey, let's understand the technology, and we don't always have to have it be part of marketing. We don't always have to have it be consumer facing, but let's actually understand how the backbones can help us in our processes internally, can help when it comes to, safety, authenticity, whether that be in supply chain, whether that be in things like your accounting systems, things that don't necessarily make their way to the end consumer. And I think those are important to bring up as well as we keep building in the space.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say that like the list of brands that did get in to try to check the box and didn't get in for the right reason is long.
None of them are here right now.
Right. And look, Johnny Walker, for example, is over 200 years old, right? So it was a challenge just to get things moving inside of our organization. So we rely upon partners, to help us with this. But it does take a lot of evangelizing across a big company to get people to move and embrace the technology. And look, we're enthusiastic about the energy in Web3 and this space. I think there's a lot for us to take away in terms of some of the friction that's being removed with respect to onboarding. I think there's a lot of work to do there, but we're committed to this space. I think that there's a lot that we can take away because we have physical products. So it's exciting for us.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think as evidenced by the fact that you're here and talking on a panel, and really leaning in. And it sounds like the culture of Web3 really that was invented in the past couple of years is the beating heart of this entire conversation about the intersection of Web3 and brand. Whether you're a Web2 brand or a Web3 native brand equals culture. So what are your findings about the culture today in the Web3 space versus maybe what was a year ago or what was a year and a half ago, and what should we be thinking about?
This is interesting because I've seen a lot of narrative online, saying the culture is dead and this is dead and that's dead. And people have been saying that since I started. Like, I see that since I have started. It's not dead. The underlying ethos and the underlying desire to disrupt and to build something new and to challenge systems, has been around forever. And this industry has just amalgamated a lot of people that believe in something different and believe in something new and given us a pathway and the means to build it actively together. I feel like, we were recently at NFT NYC. It was a very different vibe. There were less gigantic parties, but it was people having serious conversations and actively building. So I feel like the culture is still as strong as ever.
Well, I know that because I walk around with you and everywhere people grab you and they're like, Betty, Deadfellaz, I'm a holder. Yeah.
Well, I think it's also because you're a committed project, right? There's a roadmap there, and so brands pay attention to that. Those that don't have long-term plans or aspirations or a dedicated roadmap, they're not going to get the attention of big brands like ours. So I think the space has definitely grown up in a year for sure, and I think that's something that we hope will continue. And I think that there are signs that are pointing to that.
So if you're a Web3 native brand, get serious about your commitments to your community, get serious about building, and get serious about shipping.
I feel like most brands are. There's been an expectation of what can be pushed out in less than 2 years for a lot of brands. And for some people, like for Deadfellaz, we've been able to do a lot. And for others, they're building things that take a really long time. So I tweeted this again the other day. You'll start to see things emerge now because people have been building for 2 years. And so there will be use cases, there'll be answers to questions and, real reason for other people to look and be like, oh, shit, we should also join in.
Logik, you were going to say something. Yeah.
Yeah, to Betty's point, NFTs aren't dead, Web3 isn't dead. I think when we look, like I was blessed enough to get my Bored Ape at 0.08 Ethereum, so I'm riding it to the bottom.
Also, you should show everyone because you're rocking. You're rocking. Yeah.
Yeah, this thing right here. No, but I think when we look at when we evaluate the space, we have to look at that. Essentially, no one knows this space exists in the grander scheme of things. So when you take these signals, for example, when I was in, it was these ebbs and flows of like, oh, there's no more energy in the space, and then Top Shot released. Now, I wasn't necessarily a big supporter of Top Shot, but that was a low-hanging carrot for a lot of people to get into the space. So it brought in a lot of people from a different entry point to then participate. Now, as we start to mature and the space starts to continues to evolve, then we got more signals. Starbucks, we got another signal. Amazon, they're creating a layer 1. We got another signal. MasterCard, we got another signal. Adidas. When you take all these top brands creating case studies and proof of concepts and exploring the space, that creates another entry point for someone who's in another part of the world operating in the culture in a different way. My whole point is the leaders that we have in the space right now, whether it's an NFT project or a DApp or whatever, they're solving problems for a specific group of people. They're creating provocative imagery for a specific group of people. Now, a Dickle Butt or a Bored Ape gets no play from where I'm from. Like, it's not dope. So when you start to educate or other people start to understand what this technology offers, then they will start to solve problems and create imagery and experiences that we are not experiencing currently in any of these conferences. So in the next 2 years, when other people get access to what the blockchain really offers, we're gonna see another wave of monsters, beautiful monsters in this space.
I love that.
Beautiful monsters.
Yeah, yes. Yes. And if Web3 is dead, why on this show floor today did I just meet the heads of innovation, heads of Web3 for 3 of the biggest brands in the world independently, walking around trying to figure out how to be in this space and how to thrive in this space. So I think that's right on the money. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So in our call leading up to this, Sam Ewan, I'm looking at you, you mentioned building together versus borrowing, sort of the 2 potential positions of how a brand could interact with creators in this space. So let's talk about what those two things mean. And maybe you have individual experiences of working with a brand where you felt like it was borrowing, and maybe you've had experiences where building together. So like we talked about Chicago Bulls, but I'm sure there are others.
Yeah, borrowing is an interesting term. I would say theft. Yeah. Theft and exploitation is a common theme for any creative that's interacting as an individual with a brand. Anyone here that is a creative that's worked at that level, or with anyone that's higher above them, will have experienced this on some level. People have their art stolen. This has happened to us. Like the first time we ever saw Sykes' art on anything physical, it was on items that were in a market that we were just wandering around. We didn't even know. His art is online. It can be ripped. It can be put on anything. That doesn't change with Web3, but we've got provenance on chain now. And we've got this expectation for brands to kind of, apply themselves to that ethos. And so there is an opportunity where brands can interact with these creators and acknowledge them and not steal.
Yeah, I would say our approach is to let partners do what they do best, right? And a lot of times that means for the brand to get out of the way, let them apply creativity and bring the brand along into the space. There's that value exchange that you really want to have. So in our traditional marketing, again, you see that with Dave Grohl and Crown Royal and the Super Bowl. In Web3, it's Johnny Walker and Ivona Tao on the release we did with Johnny Walker Blue and the NFT we dropped on Blockbar. Ivona Tao is a fantastic artist that works in generative AI, and she created art that really had this awesome look and feel that matched that release for Johnny Walker. But again, it was like getting out of the way, letting her do her thing, and borrowing from that creativity and let the creativity lead.
What I'm hearing is that every traditional brand that's looking to innovate in this space should have a task force of Web3 native creators who are natively using these tools to advise them on their strategy.
And take the advice, because I know full well that many of the launches that you've seen fail recently had good advisors giving good advice, and they just didn't take it, and then it tanked.
Okay, so let's talk about some examples of that. No, but really, why? Is it price too high? Is it too much volume? Let's talk about why those things have failed. What is the advice that wasn't heeded? And how can we as audience members heed that advice better?
Well, that's what we're talking about now, right? It's extractive. It wasn't surfaced on their main pages, or there's none of their actual identity was woven through. There's no purpose that's discernible. Yeah, I'm sure you've got more thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at this space, it created a delusion as to how long it takes to make dope shit. Like, everyone was expecting dope shit in 3 weeks, when Lambo, when this. And then you had people who inherited a community of 6,000 people on a 10,000K project that never even managed 3 people before. So, and then you created it. It's kind of like, the way I look at it is no one has really experienced, especially in this space, the journey of sleeping on the couch for that dream that you love, and no one knowing you sleeping on that couch but your squad, and then all of a sudden you seem like an overnight success to everyone else. But the whole time, that last 7 years, you cultivated your ethos, you know where you stand. But a lot of times in this space, when you created a project and now you're expected to do these things, it's not predicated on anything. So then you don't know to go left or right, and every time you make a move, it's at the mercy of your followers, versus the followers following you for the thing that you've been putting out for the past 6 years and having that slow build. So right then and there, the expectations are not set or are not in alignment, and then the person is overwhelmed because they went from 0 to 100 overnight. So yeah, so I like to, when people get into the space, I like to just kind of reverse engineer your favorite person. Odd Future, for example, reverse how Tyler, the creator, became that, and you'll learn so much about what it is you actually want to do.
So maybe that task force in-house for non-native brands could also be reversed, and that folks with experience should crowd around the founders who were overnight successes and now who want to build longevity for their brands. I mean, I think that could be the exchange.
I really think so. Sorry, I think that when we're invited to work with a brand and they're collaborative and they want to hear what we have to say, it is honestly a pleasure, and that has happened many times now. The Wrangler team were wonderful to work with. I know the team at Adidas very well, and they're the same.
That's
and
Adidas for us.
Yeah, for the people that are saying it wrong, yeah. But yeah, it's people that are in this space leading with kind of room to experiment.
Angelic, you had something to say on this.
Yeah, just to add in, interestingly, what we've seen not work well, and we spoke about this on the call, was tokenization, right? When you see brands slapping on a logo or slapping on, number 7708 from one of your collections, and just not actually ingraining themselves in the community, not ingraining themselves in the channels, not having actual conversations with folks that want to co-create and want to co-build. That's when we get into issues of it not working out, right? And I'm sure, our two creators on stage could attest to that. And as a consumer, as someone who, might be a collector or investor in the space outside of leading a brand, that's also transparent to me. And so how do you put yourselves in the consumer shoes as you're building something at a brand? How do you put yourself in shoes of someone who, really wants to be a part of something? And you can't get away with it by just, putting something on it, lipstick on a pig, right? So that's a big part of it as well, is really building together. And sometimes it takes a lot longer than what the previous, media cycles have allowed. And it could be okay to walk away from something, to start a project together and be like, hey, this is not going to be as big as we thought, or hey, we need actually a year to build. I think that takes a lot of courage from a brand perspective, especially when you have, a lot of approvals. It might be at a legacy brand, or it might be at a young, newer brand. That doesn't matter, but taking the prerogative of understanding why you're doing it and really leaning into the right kind of the right values for the collaboration.
And I think we have a responsibility to support these projects. I think we've all pointed out that quality takes time, and the expectations of the sort of frothy hype cycle of Web3 meant you got to go fast, and you got to get it out, and you got to ship it, you got to go fast. And so if quality takes time, we're going to start seeing projects unfold that have been in the works for a long time. And it is our responsibility to support those projects so they don't feel like, oh, yeah, there's that thing that they're doing way too late. And I think that's really important. Okay, so I didn't prep any of you for this, and I didn't prep any of them for this, but I just thought of a little speed round that we could do to sort of close this out, okay? So I want everyone to say one thing that's dead, one thing that survives, and one thing that thrives in the next couple of years. So what dies, what survives, and what thrives? Who wants to start?
I can jump in here. Maybe I shouldn't, but one thing that I think is dead that we've just been talking about is just NFTs for NFT's sake, right? I mean, I think that a lot of brands that got in for the wrong reasons, to check the box with no real view on utility. Certainly for us, that's what we're about. I think that's dead. Hopefully, in my view, what survives is a friendlier user experience, less friction in onboarding, because that helps big brands like us get to scale, right? We want to be able to use this technology to solve business problems. And I think the good news is we've been working in this space for a bit, and we had some really successful activations recently where we saw that. So I think that survives. And what was the last thing again?
What thrives? You're doing great.
Jumping in here first. I think really what thrives is the ability to create new business models on top of Web3. I mean, there's a lot that falls under the Web3 umbrella of technology. One of the things that I'm particularly passionate about is just how we can apply this to luxury and luxury buyers. We have barrels of great whiskey sitting in Scotland that's aging, and it's intended for an older audience. I think here we're trying to reach a newer audience and a newer consumer with technology, and I think there's so much cool shit we can build with that. So I'm excited about that.
Hopefully someone on this show floor is building the solution for that. Okay, Betty, go.
Yeah. So what's dead? I would like to say that hype mints that sell out overnight for no reason and then ROG are dead, but they're not dead because they're not. No, degens are going to degen. It is what it is, you know. And there's not, honestly, if it's done right, I don't really see, I think people have fun, but you know, you don't want to get wrecked, so be careful.
Okay, what's surviving?
Yeah, I think that actually though, what's dead is organizations and platforms that build without looking at the ecosystem as a whole. You know, you're seeing a lot of people move with the rights and the benefit of just one group of people that participate in this space at the forefront of what they're building. That's dead. It's just not, there's no sustainability in that. It is going to die. What survives, I think, is the culture, the people that are participating, and what thrives, I think, over time, I truly believe this in my heart, is creators in this space. Because, you know, creators are the ones that are bringing this, the depth of what we're even participating in. It's giving it the heart and the soul and the humanity and the reason to be here. We're not machines, we're people. And I think that, you know, we really do have the power to change things for the better. So, yeah.
All right, let's go, Logic.
What's dead is people feeling like they don't belong, feeling like it's not made for them, feeling like othered in a space where it's supposed to be decentralized and for everyone. So in due time, I don't think, hopefully we can eradicate that feeling for most people or everyone, hopefully. The thing that survives is good people with a good head on their shoulders. It doesn't have to be the most prolific project. I respect anybody who gets up and do anything, because that separates you from the people who don't do anything at all. And then the thing that thrives is when you're participating in something and you don't even know you're in Web3 or NFTs, because most people don't care. I just want the music, or I just want the, you know, the experience.
Love that. Okay, Angelic, bring us home.
I hope that what dies is bad actors in the space, right? Folks that are really just trying to profit or monetize off, you know, another subset of folks, whether they're in on it or whether they're part of building that. And so I do hope that that dies. I do hope that that isn't something that we bring with us in the future. What survives, I think, is onboarding. And back to this inclusionary side of things, right? How do we onboard and how do we get people in the space that perhaps don't identify with degen culture? That folks that perhaps really want to understand the use cases of technology to better kind of their experiences and to better the world. And I think what survives at the end of the day is community, is culture, is art, is all of the good that is coming out of this, all of the advancements that we're making to better this world that are based on the blockchain. And so looking forward to that.
Gosh, so many gems on this stage. I hope you all enjoyed that. And it's too much to wrap up other than to say, if you're building at this intersection and you have solved for some of the things that we're talking about, swarm these people, talk to them about what you're building, and also follow them on social media. I get so much out of learning from each one of you. I got so much out of this panel today, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your afternoon at Consensus. I think that's it. That's what we got.
Thank you.
Shout out to the Deadfellaz in the community. I see you.
We see you, Horde.
ありがとうございます。